Hey, everybody. I'm Karen Van Ness with the Greater San Diego Association of Realtors, and I am the chair of the Education Committee here. I've been in the business for 46 years, and I'm sitting here with Spencer Lugash. Mr. Lugash, Spencer, is not only a practicing attorney, he has also been the broker of thousands of agents, and he's also the president of the Greater San Diego Association of Realtors.
Hi, Karen.
Hi. So, Spencer, what just happened in the real estate industry?
Oh, not much. I think everybody has now been made aware of this settlement that's taken place between NAR and our plaintiffs in the major lawsuits that we were seeing. And so I really wanted us to take an opportunity to go through some of the facts surrounding that, as opposed to some of the speculation and presumptions and even improper items that we've seen out there on social media and blogs and webinars and even through mainstream media. As you know, and you, as you mentioned, are our education chair. And so I know education and professional development are two of the pillars of my presidency and something that is very important to both of you. I know how important it is to you. And so we really want to make sure that we get these facts out to our agents and to realtors and our members so that they understand what really is being talked about and said in this settlement versus some of the, again, speculative things that we're hearing.
Yep. Well, I couldn't agree more. It's a comical expenditure of time to listen to everybody who's got an opinion on this. So can you tell me about the settlement? They keep calling it a settlement. Is it a settlement?
Yeah. So one of the first important facts to understand is that the settlement isn't finalized.
Okay.
You know, you're aware of this, right? So it's been agreed to by the parties, by the plaintiffs, and by all the defendants, but it still needs to be approved by the court. And I know probably a lot of people have kind of heard this, but it's really important to understand what that means. So first of all, some background is probably important. This isn't the first time that the parties have agreed to a settlement, as a matter of fact. And what's happened in the past is the Department of Justice has come in and they've inserted themselves into the lawsuit and into the situation, and they were able to stop these settlements from happening and get the courts to not approve them. And so while many of the items that the Department of Justice has noted that they want to be included in the settlement are included, there are still a number of things that aren't included. And so we really don't know how that's going to play out. As I said, the court still has to approve this settlement. Until that happens, it is just a proposed settlement, really. And so we don't know how the Department of Justice will play in that scenario. We do know it will probably take at least a couple of months, even if it does get approved. But until that happens, until we see formal approval, none of these terms that are going to be discussed by you and I, or that other people may have heard or know about, are in fact set in stone in any manner.
Okay. And the DOJ has their own set of hurdles that have to be cleared. Is that right?
Yeah. So they, like I said, they have certain aspects that they wanted done. Some of those were included and some of them weren't. And so whether or not the hurdles that NAR has to overcome in order to get this settlement approved will be met, whether the Department of Justice will have the ability to go in and either alter the settlement terms or flat out have the settlement rejected is still kind of yet to be discovered.
Maybe somebody should send a box of chocolates to the DOJ. Maybe it'll help. Okay. So with respect to the proposed settlement, if it were to be accepted by the courts and the DOJ were to give it its blessing, what is it going to look like in the form that it is now if it were to pass?
Yep. So there really are two items that are significant to us as realtors that are discussed in the settlement. And those are the things that I really wanted to hammer home today. And again, let's just again remark that those only will come into place should this settlement be accepted. If it is, then starting mid-July, right? So that's the first thing to understand. This hasn't started yet. Again, it won't start even if it is accepted until mid-July. The first big significant term is that no offers of compensation, of cooperating compensation, will be allowed to be offered through the MLS.
Okay.
And that's an important thing to note. It's through the MLS. So first of all, what does that mean? It means it won't be allowed in any form. So for those that we might have heard, oh, I'm gonna slip it into the confidential remarks, or I'm gonna put it in some other manner to sneak it in. That's not going to be allowed. Obviously, the MLSs will make rules and regulations to prevent that from happening. So it is not allowed to be discussed in any manner in the MLS. However, it doesn't mean that the seller can't offer cooperating compensation to a buyer's broker, to the buyer, and ultimately to their broker. They are allowed to do it, just can't be through the MLS. And so that would be done through other means and through outside negotiations and avenues.
Okay.
So it's really important. One of those ways that could be done would be through a cooperating broker, buyer-broker agreement, or through the RPA itself, through the SPBB. And so, but again, it's important to note that cooperating compensation is not dead. It's just not allowed in the MLS.
So this is something that sounds like listing agents are also going to have conversations with the sellers on, is the question of, do you wish to offer compensation to a buyer's agent? And do you wish to have a predetermined amount, which would negate being negotiable? Or do you wish to wait until you receive offers?
Yep. And so again, you've talked about it, transparency. It's both on the buy side and on the list side, right? We need to make sure that all the parties involved understand when agents get paid, how they get paid, and through what mechanism they get paid.
And why they get paid.
What
do they do
we'll
to get
talk about
paid?
value, I'm sure, in a minute. But yes, so it is important for listing agents. A lot of people are really concerned from the buy side of this, of what the effect this has as a buyer's agent. But this is really going to have a very real effect on listing agents as well, because they're the ones that have to set expectations up front for their sellers as to how this is going to work out, how cooperating compensation will work, as you mentioned. It potentially moving from a negotiation with between a seller and their listing agent at the time of the listing agreement to a negotiation between the buyer and seller at the time of the purchase offer.
A lot of negotiating is going to take place.
That's right. It's something important to note.
Okay, that's good. And then?
Yeah, so then the second issue, so I mentioned there's two major issues or aspects of the settlement that are significant, is that buyer-broker agreements are now going to be required. Okay, so, and again, that I just want to restate, that would happen if and when the settlement is approved, and not until mid-July. And so that would mean that it will be required by an agent, by a realtor, anytime before they showed a property to a buyer. The significance of how that will play out is yet to be determined. And I think that's an important aspect to understand. It's sort of why we're talking today, is because a lot of what is being said out there in the internet land and in others, again, even mainstream media is kind of getting this wrong in a lot of time, in a lot of areas, is speculation, right? It's talking about what the indirect or unforeseen consequences, what the practices will eventually become based upon these two actual facts, right? Can't offer commission or cooperating commission in the MLS anymore, must use buyer-broker agreements. That's the only thing we actually know. Pretty much everything else is kind of speculation, right? How's that going to play out? What does that mean? And we can have lots of discussions on that, but I think you and I just really wanted to set the record straight that if you're really hearing anything else, that's just somebody making predictions, right? The only two facts are the ones that we just talked about.
It sounds like fundamentally we're really being driven to being transparent with our clients, with the consumers, about what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and how much we charge for doing it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the biggest things. I know you are a big proponent of how does an agent explain and express their value, right? And that's one of the big things that agents are going to need to be doing as this plays out, and being able to get buyers to sign buyer broker agreements, explaining to sellers how commission is still an important aspect of what they do, which kind of brings back one of the or a few of the items that are not in the settlement agreement, right? That we're hearing a lot about. So what doesn't the settlement agreement say? It doesn't say anything about a reduction in commissions.
No.
Yep. There is nothing in the settlement agreement that talks about how much commissions can be, how much agents, realtors can charge, what one side must pay versus another side. There's nothing about the amount of commissions in the settlement terms at all. And so, again, we're hearing a lot about real estate commissions being slashed, selling your house for 6%, days are gone. No more, selling your house will be less expensive. We've even heard things like all buyer's agents saying, I'll sell your house for free or show houses for free. My services are for free, until mid-July. So you want to be, realtors need to be very, very careful about saying that their services are free. Your services are not for free. I know you might have some additional comments on that.
Yeah, not true.
Yeah, okay, not true. You get paid for what you do, and respect that, respect yourselves, and know that that's an important aspect of the value that you bring to a buyer.
And then you've heard comments that home prices are going to drop.
Yep. Again,
how do you see that working?
This is just speculation. There's a lot of discussion that is being had as to how this is all going to play out. Will buyers have to pay their own commissions?
Mm-hmm.
Once again, there is nothing in the settlement terms that require a buyer to pay their own commissions to the buyer's agent. All that is required is that they have to enter into a buyer broker agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to illustrate the point, you can enter into a buyer broker agreement and ask for $0, right? 0%, $0. Now, don't do that, right? We don't want any of our realtors. We work for a living, and we provide an amazing service to our clients. But I make that point just to illustrate that the requirement is to enter into a buyer broker agreement. Right. The requirement isn't that you have to charge a certain amount or any amount for that matter. And again, ultimately, who pays that buyer broker amount is up for negotiation, right? And we discussed that can be determined through either cooperating buyer broker agreement. If the seller has still negotiated cooperating commission with their listing agent, then the buyer's agent can negotiate that directly with the listing agent, or it can be done between buyer and seller through the RPA and through that SPBB form that has been, in fact, in our RPA since when?
December 22.
December 22. So this has been contemplated, and this has been something that's already been available to agents for quite some time now.
And buyer representation agreements have been around for almost going on 3 decades, very seldom used. But as a listing agent, we don't work without a listing agreement. And as a buyer's agent, I don't work without a buyer's agreement.
And that's a great way to put it. Consumers understand the concept of a listing agreement.
Yes.
Right? Sellers understand that they're not going to be able to list their house with a realtor without signing a listing agreement. Buyers will understand the same thing, right? And that's the way that it should be expressed. If buyer's agents understand it and are able to articulate, when I work with a seller, I sign a contract. When I work with a buyer, I also need to sign a contract. That's the best way to handle it.
I think it's really about agents understanding their value and learning how to articulate it, because it can be difficult if you haven't done a lot of transactions. Do you even actually know what your value is?
Right.
I mean, as I say, seeing the other side of grievance and pro standards, a buyer's agent is such a gift for a seller, and a seller's agent, it's a second set of eyes on those disclosures and inspections. Nobody can come back and say that the buyer didn't have independent representation without a conflict of interest.
We don't want to go back to the days of sub-agency where buyers weren't represented, right?
No.
and all the fiduciary responsibilities went to the seller, and buyers will understand that. And so there's a lot of different ways that value can be expressed. Uh, you have ideas. Um, your our listeners are going to be listening to all sorts of things that talk
Right.
about how to express value. Buyer presentations, of course, are going to become a big part of that. The one thing that I always say, and this is the broker and the lawyer in me, but one of the things that I like to remind realtors is we have all of these contracts, all of these forms. We have a lot, right? In California in particular, that our clients need to sign, need to wade through when it comes to dealing with the transaction. In the past, I won't even say recent years, but past years, it has become easier and easier for a realtor to kind of hide behind the forms and just have their TC send them through DocuSign or through Glide or some other transaction and kind of just send them along. The clients then don't really have an opportunity to ask a lot of questions. Sure, they can call, they can email and say, but it's not like back in the day when we had only written contracts and you had to sit down with your client and get them to fill them out and sign them while they were there. And that obviously sparked more conversation about the documents, right? You're sitting right next to them and they would read through it and they'd ask questions, and you as their agent and the realtor were able to answer those questions. And so I really encourage realtors to embrace these documents again. There's a lot of them and they're very complicated. And in terms of providing value, your understanding of the documents or any particular documents, and let's take in this case the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement, your complete understanding of how that document works, what it says, how it plays in with the RPA, the SPBB, the ABCD, all these other forms that are potentially part of the transaction, understanding and being able to explain that to your client as you're asking them to sign it. Just your expertise alone on that shows value and shows that knowledge that you know what you're talking about, and it provides the ability for you to say to your client, this is just the beginning. This is just the very first document that I'm going to be asking you to sign. There's going to be a lot more, just as complicated, some of them even more complicated. The RPA is 16 pages alone, right? So for you to be able to show them that you know what you're talking about, that you know how to explain these forms, that's a great way to show value. Again, not the only way, but it's a really great start. And so we encourage you, I know you, to become experts, to come to classes that we're going to be offering here at SCAR, that we do offer. I know you teach some classes specifically on the buyer representation agreement. We are going to be putting on a ABR class. I'll let you talk about that.
Okay. April 2nd and 3rd, 2 full days. Ginny Field, who is renowned in the field of teaching CAR and AR designations and certificates, is going to do 2 full days of accredited buyer representation training. And you can sign up through SDAR's website for it. And it is at no cost to the agents.
Free.
It is
get
free.
Your accredited buyer representation certification. Now, just we should note, part of getting the certification is that you obviously have to take these classes. There's still some other requirements.
You have to be there for 2 full days.
You have to be there for
No
2 full
cutting out
days.
early.
Yep. And just because you take the classes doesn't mean you automatically get the certification. There are some prerequisites, there are some post-requisites.
Right. You have to have a certain number of transactions, but you have time to get it. Now, there is a requirement for another certification, like for a seller's representative specialist. We are asking Kevin Sears at NAR if maybe they will forgive that for a period of time. We don't know what the answer is, but we're working on it. But this will be limited attendance. We only have 500 seats with 19,000 agents in San Diego County. We're expecting to be full. So please go on and sign up. There'll be coffee, there'll be water, there'll be food trucks for people to grab something to eat. But it's critical because you talked about these documents, Spencer, and being an attorney. The one thing real estate agents don't understand is they get paid as well as an attorney in many cases. And all of these documents are contractual and legally binding. And that's the reason you need to understand them.
Yeah, you have to understand them. You have to know them for yourself, and you have to be able to explain them when your clients are asking you
It's
about
one
it.
of the biggest values.
Yeah,
And negotiating.
and negotiating, and that's going to be a big part. And again, we can have discussions for
Yes.
days, and we have, frankly, on just like everybody else, speculating on how things are going to play out, what future documents we might see that comes of this, how practice might actually play out. And frankly, it could take a couple of years before our industry sort of wades through the actual new practices, day-to-day practices of how these changes are going to take effects for us.
Right.
But the main thing that I think we wanted to bring to light today was differentiating between the speculative remarks that you see on so many outlets right now versus what the actual facts of what's actually being required, so that you can tell the difference and make up your own opinion as to what may come in the future based on what you know is actually going to take place. And again, those are only two items that are really significant in the upcoming settlement. If it's approved, buyer representation agreements will be required before you can show a property, and cooperating commission will not be allowed in the MLS, still allowed outside the MLS.
And Spence and I are going to start doing this once a week for all of you that are interested. And we'll go through the forms and we'll talk about it and we'll role play it. And it's advantageous that he's an attorney besides a broker of thousands of agents and the president. And this is my passion, is education and competence and risk management.
Professional development, all of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the one thing, again, at the risk of creating a little speculation myself, I do think that these changes, should they come about, will help create more professionalism in our industry.
It's going to level us up because we all have a fiduciary duty. And so we do need to embrace being the professionals that we are paid to be and expected to be by our clients,
Exactly.
trusted to be.
Exactly. Well, so as Karen said, we're going to be trying to do this once a week, pick some of these topics that we've discussed and kind of delve into them a little bit more and talk about the forms in more depth and what forms are used and when. And so we look forward to seeing more of you.
Thank you.
Thanks.